It's rock and roll!
Welcome to the Look It's Rock and Roll podcast. I'm your host, Julian Gill, who's lost his mind. Today we've got Marcus Almighty Mark, 69th Blizzard Ken, and Lonnie, St. Louis Kiss.
What's up?
We are going to be talking about the runner-up in the listener vote. We did give you a bunch of albums and ask for you to chime in. There was Genesis, there was Rock City Angels, there was Velvet Revolver, and there was Scorpions' Love Drive. And of course, Scorpions won, Ken, and Lonnie. This came in second place. So this week, we're going to be talking about Velvet Revolver's first album, Contraband, which was released in 2004. They had gotten together a couple years earlier, or a year earlier. Lonnie, why don't you give us the overview of them coming together and the stuff they were doing on VH1 and all that jazz?
Well, the band itself had come together earlier. Matt Sorum, Duff McKagan, and Slash played together at a Randy Castillo benefit concert after Randy had passed, and Josh Todd and Keith Nelson from Buck Cherry had joined them on stage for a few songs. And I wish there was some recording of that performance, because all accounts are it was so electric that Slash, Duff, and Matt called each other the next day and said, "Hey, what do you think about doing something, with Keith and with Todd?" So they originally brought Keith and Todd in. It didn't work out with those two for different reasons, and they were let go pretty quickly. But they still wanted to do something together, because I think when you find that magic together, it's undeniable. So Izzy Stradlin came in, wrote some songs with them, and Izzy being Izzy, it didn't work out with Izzy either. So Dave Kushner was brought in to be the rhythm guitar player, and they were searching for a singer. And I do remember this when they were searching for a singer, hearing that and I remember when Izzy was brought in too, hearing rumors that they were working together on a project. And they didn't have a name yet, but it was exciting because it's like 2002 at this point. There is still no Chinese Democracy or any kind of sign of a Chinese Democracy album even at this point, but the other members of Guns N' Roses getting together doing something was very exciting. And they kept looking for a singer and looking for a singer. And I'd heard rumors of Sebastian Bach. I'd heard rumors, obviously the Josh Todd thing, and then they had put out. It was a known thing that they were looking for a singer, and they put out ads, and people were sending in tapes. And there was a VH1 special even about this, and it showed Slash and Duff and Matt going through all these tapes of different singers, and some were good, some were horrendous, and as you can probably imagine. But around the same time, Scott Weiland and Stone Temple Pilots broke up, and in the VH1 documentary kind of goes into that too. And I remember Matt Sorum saying, Scott Weiland, rock star, instant notoriety, and they brought him in, and they did the song "Set Me Free," which ended up on the Hulk soundtrack in 2002, 2003, something like that. And Scott being Scott, they had Scott had some drug issues, and the recording was put off, but eventually the album does get completed and comes out on June 8th, 2004. And I saw them in May of 2004, actually, in St. Louis, before the album even came out. It was the first stop on the tour was St. Louis, which was kind of a middle finger to the singer of Guns N' Roses that we're going to start our tour in St. Louis.
Yeah, so I remember this band coming together as well, because I remember I get excited about Izzy, because I like Izzy.
Mm-hmm.
I love Izzy. Izzy's really cool. And I was hoping that they would get something together. And one of the things I think is funny as well, that, you know, when we mentioned Contraband, everyone was saying, oh, the Richard Black album from 1991 with Michael Schenker, Cher Penderson, and Blotz, and Tracy
That's what I
Gunziger.
thought.
And yeah, I would actually love to talk about that album, because that's a real fun, you know, supergroup from that period. But no, it is this one. They went through some of the other vocalists were Kelly Schaefer, Neurotica, Pat Briggs from Psychotica, Travis Meeks, and Mike Matchevek, who I have no idea who any of those guys are. I mean, I recognize Sebastian Bach's name, obviously. I never saw the VH1 documentary. And there's one other song that they did before they did the album, and that is, of course, the cover of Pink Floyd's Money, which went on the Italian Job soundtrack. So Set Me Free, I remember that coming out, and I was like really excited. I was really excited that it was a possibility of a early Use Your Illusion, because obviously Izzy had bailed during that tour, you know, of that reunion with Matt / Duff and Izzy with a different singer would have been really cool. I think I read or saw in the documentary that I was watching that Josh Todd, they decided they didn't like his voice and the way he sang. And they didn't like the original guitarist that they had, because he just doubled what Slash was doing, didn't have enough character of his own. And I have no idea who the hell Dave Kushner is to that day. I was like, who the hell's this? Why is he he's like to me, he was like some no one. Just
Wasn't he in
random.
Suicidal Tendencies or something?
He was
Correct.
in Suicidal Tendencies. He was in Wasted Youth. And then he was in one of the crossover bands as well. So, I mean, he was legit. He just wasn't in the area of music that I had any familiarity with. So when you go from having Izzy involved to having someone who you have no idea who it is involved,
Yeah.
it was just a bit of a downer. So Set Me Free, of course, with the Hulk soundtrack, I was like, wow, this is like Guns N' Roses, because we were waiting for Chinese Democracy. We were getting little bits and pieces played in various shows that were coming out on bootlegs, and it sounded promising, but it was like Axl was never getting any closer, so it made sense. I dislike Stone Temple Pilots. I never got into them. So
Same here.
yeah, Mark, let's start with
I like
you.
them.
And
I do
you're
think
over.
thanks, Ken.
All right, it's going to be two versus two here. We see how things are breaking down already. You know, Mark, what was your take on Velvet Revolver? Were you aware of them at the time that it was all kind of happening? And you know,
Well, let's
whatnot?
put it this way. I was a big Guns N' Roses fan. I loved Appetite. I loved the Illusions records. I mean, the Illusion records, and this is much to most Guns N' Roses people, they don't really agree with me on this, but I prefer the Illusions records over Appetite. I don't know. I just like them better, because to me, there's much more expanse in the kind of style of writing. There's more like there's like piano and there's horns and there's all the kinds of other stuff. The Appetite stuff was just really straight ahead hard rock stuff, and that's awesome. It's a fantastic record. Don't get me wrong, I love that record, but I just was more into the broadened sound that they went for in the Illusions. But when they kind of took this long break, I started getting really annoyed, because I loved them. I went to see them. I was full support of them. Then they put out that Spaghetti Incident thing. I was just like, what the hell is this? And then there was nothing for a long time, you know? And then I heard, when I was out on tour in 2004, I heard Fall to Pieces on the radio when I was out in my van. I was like, oh, what the hell is this? And, you know, I recognized Slash's guitar playing immediately when I heard it, but it was the voice I wasn't catching on right away, because I hated Stone Temple Pilots. I couldn't stand them. And when they said, oh, that's the new band with, you know, Miss Scott Whalen and Slash, I was like, really? He's in that band? And at first I thought, I was like, it's okay. You know, I didn't think it was too bad. Now, keep in mind, by this point, I had stopped listening to that whole Metallica, Guns N' Roses, and all the stuff that started to come on radio at this point in the 2000s, radio rock, you know, all those typical bands, and I wrote them down here too. All the Green Day's, Three Doors Down, Nickelback, Papa Roach, Godsmack. I was like, ugh, I was so gagging and puking when I heard this stuff. I had totally switched over to what I considered like the new breed of modern metal, but mainly coming out of Sweden, like bands like In Flames, Opeth, the American stuff, Jag Panzer, Iced Earth, and that's what I was into. So I was totally disconnected from stuff like Velvet Revolver and all this stuff. So really, I got into this really, really, really late. Like I can't say I know much about this record apart from what I've listened to the last 2-3 weeks of it. But my introduction was Fall to Pieces on the radio when I was on tour, and really I knew nothing of it until maybe the last 3 weeks.
Nice. Well, that's the whole idea of the show, is to, for us to explore music and pick stuff that may be an introduction for each other. So, Ken, you like Stone Temple Pilots? That surprises me.
Really? I
Yeah,
like them.
it does actually. I mean, when you think
I had
about
the
what you
first
listen to,
two
Linda
albums.
Ronstadt and all that, and you
Yeah.
like,
I have a wide variety of.
Never ceases to amaze.
Yeah, there's a lot of different and good music out there, so I don't just stick to one genre or whatever. If it's good, it's good. So yeah, when I think, I'm trying to remember about when first heard about this going on, but I think something about Slash. Excuse
Sorry.
me. I remember first heard about Slash was putting a band together and it sounded like some Guns N' Roses guys, and then I heard that Scott Weiland. I was like, oh, really? So that should be interesting, and I think I did hear that. The first song I heard was Slither, I believe. So, and then but the thing is, I said, oh, okay, I gotta get this. That's pretty good. I gotta get. I never got around to ever buying it. I just never did. It just kind of passed by. Yeah, I was listening to what Mark hates, like Green Day and stuff like that. Because I like Green Day. I liked a lot of their stuff at that time. It kind of happened. I heard the good song. I said, yeah, I need to get that. I'm gonna get it. But then I never got it. So I didn't really listen to it, that full album, for the first time, the full album, until this morning.
Wow.
That was the first time hearing the full album.
I don't feel so bad.
Yeah. So, the problem, Mark, with Chinese Democracy, that one, it didn't have enough sauce. So, anyway. Okay. Anyway, so yeah, that's about it. I knew it was probably really good, and I heard a couple of songs, and I thought, oh, this is pretty good stuff. I was going to get it, and I didn't get it.
all right, Lonnie. So Scott wanted the band to be called Black Velvet Revolver.
Mm-hmm.
Slash apparently just wanted Revolver. We know the Beatles had
Right.
Revolver as a play on words for a record going round, around, around. Just explaining that if anyone had never heard it. So it's a Velvet Revolver, a smooth record. I mean, is that what we're talking about here? And what does everyone think of the band name?
I thought the name was cool because I really like the Revolver aspect in it, being you had 3 members of Guns N' Roses involved. It was a little bit of play on words, I thought that was very appropriate and very needed. I like the idea of it just being called Revolver. I think would have been even cooler. But Velvet Revolver has a nice ring to it, and it's a name you kind of it's unique, like Guns N' Roses too, where it's a name you kind of remember when you hear it for the first time. When you hear it, because it's unique enough, but it's cool enough at the same time. Kind of like the name Guns N' Roses. I thought it was very fitting. I like it better than Black Velvet Revolver. That's too much and too clumsy. I don't. You know what I mean? It's just a name of a band should be pretty short and sweet and to the point. It shouldn't be more than 2 words. I think it would have been a little too clumsy going that way. But I think the name's very appropriate. What do you guys think?
Mark, Stone Temple Pistols or Black Velvet Revolver?
I think Velvet Revolver is pretty good. I think that whenever I heard the name, the first thing that came to my mind was not a turntable. It was a gun, like revolver. So I thought that maybe that was kind of their, backhanded salute to Guns N' Roses, calling themselves Velvet Revolver, right? Black Velvet Revolver, too long, just like Lonnie said. And I kind of get the feeling that Black Velvet, when I think of that, I think of like booze or something like that. So it's not a surprise Scott Weiland thought of that. But and Revolver is also kind of, a magazine too. Isn't there a magazine called Revolver Magazine? So, I mean, there would have been probably a lot of brouhaha just using that name. So I think Velvet Revolver is a good name.
Yeah, and there was a band called Revolver in New York because Jay Mala, who was a punk singer or garage singer from the 60s that joined the Joe Perry project. Sorry, shut up. Ken, band name.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good band name. I understood it pretty much right away, based on the band members, the Revolver part, of course. I'm glad they just didn't do Revolver. You'd think that, oh yeah, they're just, they're tipping their hat to the Beatles or something, but they don't sound anything like the Beatles, So I think it's a good thing to put something in front of the Revolver name, and yeah, Velvet Revolver. It sounds, it's smooth. It works.
Yeah, and you can't use Gun because that was a good Scottish band called Gun. All right. Let's go into overall thoughts of the album. It was released on June the 8th, 2004. Obviously, as Lonnie's already told us, Set Me Free had been out on the Hulk soundtrack before that, but it was, I think it was remixed or re-recorded for this album. Is that true?
I think it's remixed. There's very subtle difference. If I listen to it, I can hear very, very minor differences.
I haven't listened to this album in donkey's years until this show came up. So, a little bit like Ken and Mark, for that matter, it's taken a little bit of getting back into. So, Ken, since you listened to it freshest,
first impressions.
Yeah, what were your initial thoughts of this album? What are the overall things that you like or dislike? And then we'll get into picking favorites from the album.
I like the album. It's pretty darn good. There's no real song on there that I say that song just blows or whatever, sucks, but there's nothing on there like that. It's very consistent, and it's guitar riffs and rocking and singing and the performance itself. So I really thought some songs had some. Some were a little bit better than other ones. Obviously, there's some that stand out to me that we'll get to, I guess. But yeah, I think it was pretty good. There's some things that didn't maybe like is sometimes the vocals to me were either not. And this is all like with the rock. It's like being picky, but understanding the lyrics to some of the songs, what he's singing, or the vocals are too far back in a couple of songs to me. A little bit. It should be more up front sometimes. That's bad. I mean, that's just nitpicking. But otherwise, it's a good rockin' album.
All right, Mark. You picked this up a few weeks ago for preparation for this. How's the overall product for you?
And it's not nitpicking, Ken. Honestly, I think that what you've said is very valid. Sometimes vocals can be mixed a little too far back in the mix, and it becomes difficult to understand what people are saying. And I had a similar experience with some of this as well. I was like, what is he saying there? And some of the choruses as well. Overall, I think, and I gotta be careful how I phrase this because I know I'm gonna start getting tomatoed for this, but I find that this record to me is just what was going on at the time. It just seems like such a radio rock record, this thing. I mean, to me, it doesn't sound much different than what was going on at that time. I mean, but if it wasn't for the fact that Slash was in there and I could pick out his playing, and his playing adds so much to this music, I find that it's, it wasn't something remarkably different than what was going on at that time period. I mean, I like it. It's a good rock record, but I mean, there was many elements of it that I found was common amongst it. Andy Wallace mixed it. He has such a notable sound to his mixes. You can tell he's done one of these bands over around that time period as well, because he has that sound that he does on his records is on this. It was during the whole let's see who can have the loudest CD era as well. So they had that going on, where it was a very dense sounding CD, maybe a little too dense, But it's a good rock record. I'll put it that way. Like, it's definitely one of these CDs that you would bring to a party, bust out the 2.4 and start, listening to these songs. But I listened to this over and over and over again, and there are songs I like on there, and I'll talk about them when we get to that. But I found it difficult to remember a lot of these songs. They weren't really overly catchy, in my opinion, but they're good. It's like I said, it's a good party thing. It's almost kind of like how I first heard some of these other bands, like when I hear like Godsmack and stuff like that. It's catchy, it's cool. Do I remember some of these songs in the morning? Probably not. But I don't know. I mean, I don't want to diss it because I love Slash as a guitar player, and I think, like, let's put it this way: Duff McKagan on Guns N' Roses, he was a big factor in there. His sound of his bass was very much a sound of their band, and I could pick out his bass playing anywhere. On this record, you could tell me it was Joe Blow from down the street playing bass, and I would believe it. You know, so some of these elements that would have added to the characteristics of the album are not there, I find.
Well, Lonnie.
I couldn't disagree with Mark more. I really couldn't. I think the sound of this record and the uniqueness of this record is so far removed from everything else that was going on in 2004. This album sounds nothing like Green Day, sounds nothing like Godsmack, sounds nothing like Three Doors Down or Nickelback or anything else that was popular at the time. It stands by itself 100%. Slash's guitar playing, Matt on drums, and Duff. I mean, I missed that combination, and so much so that I can remember. I mean, this is so dates this 2004 is ancient in 2021 because, and which is crazy to think about. But I had heard "Set Me Free" obviously with the Hulk soundtrack, and the radio station in town was going to debut the new single from Contraband. I don't know, a month or 6 weeks before the album came out. You know, just like, you know, debut singles come out. And I remember driving around in the car, and they said, "Oh, we're going to play it in the 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock hour," whatever it was. And I just remember driving around, and I had to get out of the car for something to go into a store and came back in, and I heard Slither, and I knew what it was right away because it has such a unique sound. I knew that was Slash on guitar. I knew that rhythm section. It sounds so much different than everything else. Granted, it was a song I hadn't heard before. I'm like, oh, this is probably it. But it sounded so much different than everything else that radio station was playing at the time. It was such a breath of fresh air. And I remember hearing interviews that Slash and Duff and the guys were doing at the time saying, you know what, America and the world really needs a good, strong rock record and not this new metal stuff that was popular at the time and some of this watered down crap that was popular at the time. I mean, this is a heavy record. I mean, there's some ballads on there, but there are some heavy guitar driven songs on here. And I absolutely love this record because of it.
Okay, interesting. Because when this album came out, my opinion hasn't changed from having it when it came out to re-listening to it for this show. I still find the production very lacking. And I'm just looking through, the producer's list of credits from around that time. He's doing stuff like Static X, Linkin Park, Stained.
Yeah.
Even Slayer, and these days he's doing Justin Bieber, Flo Rida, Carly Rae Jepsen. Just to stick the fork in and give me a reason to dislike him. No, what I find with it is it's a big rock record without a big rock sound. There's not a good separation between the instrumentations. I find it muddy in parts. I'm missing a clarity of the backbeat. Again, and read that as, but Duff, where's Duff?
Andy Wallace.
I do hear, there's one song that my notes are, it sounds like Matt Sorum's hitting wet pancakes rather than drums. I'm not getting a good.
Yeah, I ripped your guys' albums too.
Well, yeah, I'm not getting a consistent dynamism on the drums. There are some songs where the snare's like nice and tight, and you're getting a good snap on it, and other ones where it's cardboard boxy. So you're going from Revenge to Carnival of Souls within the same album in terms of the production. But in terms of overall, I think it's a really strong album material-wise, but it doesn't have anything that catchy. I could remember, some of the riffs, some of the melodies, so I think it probably is catchy enough for a band that only put out 2 albums anyway. Come on, and the last one, I'm probably one of the few who's got that as well. There you go. I found my copy. So overall, I mean, it sounds dated, which I don't think is surprising because of the era in which it was recorded, but the material is overall good enough. And I think the overall consistency is pretty damn good. So, I don't hate it. It's just I don't think I own anything else produced by this guy. Oh yeah,
But
he's also Brides.
But that's the thing. Honestly, that's what I was trying to get at in terms of the fact that when you hear like gun stuff, they had that really good production to it, that good mixing to it. Mike Klink did a great job with guns. If Mike Klink would have came in and did the Velvet Revolver thing, I think it would have been much better record overall. Like you said, a lot of the songs, there's good potential for them to be much better and much stronger than they were. I think the mix definitely suffers the whole record. I agree with you 100%. It's very muddy in spots. The vocals are way too back in some spots. They're overly reverbed and stuff, and it makes it difficult to pull out some of those vocals. I mean, you can never misunderstand Axl whenever he's sang on the record. You can pick him out and hear his stuff no problem. That's production and mixing, right? But it's also a sign of the times too, like we were saying earlier. So
exactly. No, I agree. It's sign of the times. I was going to say that because usually you get to these different eras, everyone's producing the same. It's that sound, the current sound. Everyone's trying to go for that same sound. Even today, everyone it's a lot of the music sounds the same because they're going for that same sound and whatever. So it's always that way. It's always been that way. A lot of bands, unfortunately, don't or they follow the trend and just go with what's going on right now as far as sound. Unfortunately, it happens, and instead of having a producer that's gonna just do it, differently than what's going on in the music industry right now.
Lonnie,
Or then.
do you have any idea why they picked Josh Abraham to produce this? Any clue?
I don't. I was gonna say that if I do have one complaint about it and one wish about this album, I wish Mike Klink would have produced it because I do love the sound of those Guns albums so much. Mm-hmm. Talk about a guy who could get the most out of those musicians and just make them shine. It was him. I really do wish that he had produced the album. Why they went the direction they did? Was it to just appease Scott? I really don't know.
They're in fear of sounding dated, even if it's like 10 years or something. I think a lot of it's the bands feel like, oh, we try to, produce like it's like, oh, we're dated, because that's over with. We've done that already,
It's been 13 years since Use Your Illusion had come out. That's an excellent point. Do we want an album that sounds like it's 13 years old? No, we want to go with something that's more fresh. I guess it's the only reason I can think why they went that direction.
Yeah, so maybe if you're out there listening, chime in on one of the threads, wherever you listen to this. If you know the answer, let us know. We always, love to learn stuff that we don't necessarily know while we're talking about it on the show. Okay, let's get into favorites. Because, that's what this is about. What is the best material on this album for you and why? Let's just do roundtable, one pick at a time. We usually pick three favorites. Lonnie will, of course, say that all three are three-way ties so that he gets to pick the whole album. Mark, let's start with you and your one of your favorite picks.
Well, I got to say that there are three songs to me that definitely stand out on this record. Like really strong songs, and the first one is "Fall to Pieces." I ever since I heard it the very first time, it immediately caught me. And like I said, I was very surprised that was Scott Weiland because I actually enjoyed listening to it, and I was like, "This is the same guy from that band that I don't like." That kind of shows me that he had a little bit more to offer as a vocalist, because of the way he sung on that. And like I said, I thought Slash did a great job on guitar on this song, just fantastic stuff.
Yeah, my notes on that one are, a ballad, P break.
Wow.
Yeah. Ken, what first pick?
For my first pick, I'll go with the same pick as Mark. I agree with Fall to Pieces. I circled that one. I said it was a nice change of pace in that song. It's a slower paced rocker. And I wrote down something Guns N' Roses would have done. It sounds like something that definitely could have been on one of their albums. So it's a very good song.
All right, Lonnie.
I like Fall to Pieces. I really do. I don't know if I put it in my top three on the record, although it's not going to be in my bottom three either. I do like it. And the first time I heard it was they started the tour in St. Louis, and the album wasn't out yet, and it was such a weird show because no one knew any of the original songs. We hadn't heard any of them, and then like the third song, they just go in the intro of Mr. Brownstone, and like the place just went berserk. I thought I was going to get crushed to death, but they did do Fall to Pieces that night. And Scott Weiland says this song is about when my ex-wife left me. Now we're back together, and it's been like one of the best years of my life. You can look up Scott Weiland, his on again, off again relationship with his wife. And I was going through my divorce at the time too, so it kind of hit home to me like, oh, that's kind of. I was like right smack dab in the middle, and it was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. So that song and Scott's like 30-second introduction on that song, it like stuck with me forever. But I'm not going to put it in my top 3. Sorry, Ken. My top 3. my number 3, counting from 3 to 1, of my favorite. I'm going to put "Do It for the Kids." I think that's a fun song. Little language in it, but that's Guns N' Roses though too. It's very guitar heavy, kind of vulgar. It kind of just reminds me of a Guns N' Roses type song, like Ken said, almost about Fall to Pieces. That I could hear Axl singing that song whenever I listen to it. So, "Do It for the Kids" is my number 3. What about you, Julian?
That's a decent song. I just want to cover my notes on that. It's like the "Went Too Fast, I'm Out of Luck," and I don't even give a. Just get.
You can hear Axl singing that.
No, he just starts throwing them in randomly. It's like he found he had some cadence there, and he's just going to throw it. I just keeps doing it. Just I'm like, shut up. But I like the vibe, so nice pick. All right, yeah, my first pick is the first song on the album, "Sucker Train Blues." Great opener. It's a great balance between the two guitarists at that time. A nice vocal, good phrasing, not too busy drumming, pretty kind of traditional. Lonnie's freezing up, which is really distracting. Good chorus, but the solo. This is, first song out, you got a great guitar solo there, but it's also kind of Axl-ish with the spoken stuff going on in it. So really good lead-off track. I always talk about what is important to me is for an album to start with something powerful, something dynamic, something that sets the tone for the rest of the album. Sucker Train Blues totally does. And you're all nodding your head. I'm like, okay, good. I picked something because I've been insulting all your picks. All right, Mark, give us another.
Okay. So this my second pick is Slither. I really like that song. I think that it was a very catchy song. I like the playing in it. It's one of the songs where I kind of picked out Duff a little bit more in it. Great bass playing. I think the rhythm section in this song is pretty solid in this. And again, I find one thing that's very consistent with my picks is that I find that the songs that I start digging into Slash-wise are the ones that really stay with me, because I think that Slash is such a identifiable guitar player, which is very strange nowadays because there aren't too many guitar gods out there anymore. And I think Slash is one of the ones that's still around and that's from the newer generation. He's our Jimi Hendrix. You know what I mean? So, and there's not that many of them around now. Yeah. But Eddie Van Halen's gone. But Slash is here, and he's very bluesy. He's very, I don't know, his feel. I really like his feel of his guitar soloing, and even his rhythm playing. He's kind of sloppy, but there's something very cool about his slop. It's like Ace except better.
Yeah.
Ooh. Because I see Slash as Keith to Joe to Slash. He was like the progression of that sort of guitarist and that sort of attitude.
Yeah. Well, they weren't exactly great players either, right? I mean, in terms of technically.
Not technically, exquisite.
Just play the right thing.
Not Randy Rhoads, certainly not Jimi Hendrix's either, or Page's.
Well, Hendrix isn't a great player, like.
No, but in terms of innovation, he was. his innovation. And I'm sorry, Joe Perry is not an innovator. Keith was very good at the meat and potatoes playing, and the attitude, the stage presence, So Slash inherited that space for me. Ken, your next pick.
Yeah. Well, do I get anything for getting another match with anybody? But anyway, I have to agree with Lonnie on his, do it for the kids. It's a great riff, and this is one of the ones where, it's catchy chorus. It does have an actual catchy chorus in it, and I like the nice guitar fills that Slash does throughout the song, and I really like the bridge. I mean, writing a good bridge is important, and the bridge in this song is really, I thought, very, very cool. It's unfortunate, lots of songs either don't have bridges or they're a crappy bridge, but it was really, really, really good song. So that's another one of my picks.
Oh, you're gonna make Lonnie happy agreeing with him. Lonnie, yeah, give Ken his next pick to agree with.
Yeah.
My number 2 is "Set Me Free." I always have loved the song, and I was glad it ended up on the album because I loved it when it was on the Hulk soundtrack, and I still do. I think that just that opening riff of that song, and you can really hear Slash's tone as that riff opens up, and then you get into the vocals, and Scott's vocals are really, really deep and cool as the song kind of comes down a little bit, and then comes back up with that riff again. And it's a great solo in it too. I think it was a song that that started the band. It kind of got, I remember listening to that song for a year, just waiting for the album itself to come out. Like, God, if the album sounds anything like this, the anticipation was just so great. And I've always loved that song from the first time I heard it, and still do to this day.
And it's their first song, so
Right.
It's kind of the cornerstone for Velvet Revolver. All right, my next pick. Oh, Illegal Eye song. I love that. Has your drummer had enough cocaine today? All those triplet fills. I love that. It must have been an absolute bitch to perform that drum track. Because every time you turn around, every time there's a gap in like the singing or the vocal or the guitar, triplets. So I actually didn't like that song for that reason back when the album was new, but I found it really endearing. I was like, I like that after all. So, all these years later, I like it. It's got similar elements like Big Machine, but it comes across as more cohesive as a song than that other one. And I love the vocal variety from Scott on here. I've said I'm not a fan of Scott Weiland, but I do like his singing on this, and it just seems totally locked in to the attitude. So, good song, really good song, in my opinion. All right, Mark, number 3.
Okay, well, my number 3, and you know what? I would have probably placed it higher. I think it maybe would have been my number 2, all things said. And this is not going to be a popular pick with you guys, I have a feeling. Mainly because when I heard this song, when I started listening to this record the last couple of weeks, this is the one song that immediately made me go, wow, that was a fucking good song. I'm going to listen to that again. And I'm going to put it on headphones this time and really listen to it because, and this will give it away, I really love the sound of the acoustic guitar on this song. And it really showed that if they would have paid more attention to some of the sonics on this record, it would have been such a good record, and that was Loving the Alien. I love that song at the end of the record. I think it was really well sung. The acoustic guitar playing is good. Slash is underrated as an acoustic guitar player. Absolutely. In my opinion, he not only does he have great feel on electric guitar, but his acoustic guitar playing, when he has something really good to play, it's so good. And I really enjoyed that song. I mean, I think I listened to that song more than probably most of the other songs on the record. I mean, I listened to the whole thing, but I kept going back to that song a few times because I really liked that song. And also, I'll admit, excuse me, the first time I saw it on the record credits, the track listing, I'm thinking to myself, is that a David Bowie cover they're doing? Because he has a song called Loving the Alien on a record called Tonight. And I really liked that song. I was like, it can't be. So I went and checked and no, it wasn't. But that was my introduction to like jumping to that song to hear it. But I wasn't disappointed. It's a great song.
No, cool pick. Ken.
Yeah, it seems they use songs that have titles from other. When I saw "Set Me Free," I thought, "Oh, did they cover a Sweet song, The Sweet, or whatever?" But unfortunately, they didn't on that one. I do agree with Julian about I love the drumming on the Illegal song. Yeah, that was that's what stuck out to me on that one. But that's not my next pick. Next pick, third pick is for me is You Got No Right is my third pick. I think it has a fantastic melodic solo in it. Just really nice melodic solo. It's a really different song. That's probably why I like, I like variety, So it's really different. As a stripped down, from the rest of the songs. I just said I really like songs, it's real good. That's one I'll go back and listen to again, kind of like Mark was, and go back and listen to the other song.
So Lonnie, before you do your pick, guys, what do you think? There are 3 ballads on this album. Is that too much? Loving the Alien, I'm calling a ballad.
No.
The one Ken just mentioned, I think, is the best of the 3 as ballads, and then Fall to Pieces. Is that too much for this sort of band to be doing, Mark?
I don't know if I would call Falling to Pieces a ballad, but yeah, I think 3 ballads on a record is usually a lot, but there's a difference in these ballads. They're not the sappy, like "Baby, I Love You" kind of, ballads that you expect when you think of a ballad. Yeah, and it's not just, down to like one acoustic guitar and some guy crying in his beer, kind of thing. These are, I don't know, like that's why when I heard you say that Fall to Pieces is a ballad, I was like, really? I never would have called it that. But, hey, that doesn't mean you're wrong. That's how you see it. That's how you see it. But
I could
3
be wrong.
ballads, 3 ballads
ballad.
on 3 ballads on a record is usually a lot, but I guess it depends on how you define ballad.
Nice. Ken.
Yeah, what was the question again? No,
Three-
the ballad.
three
songs.
I'm okay for it. Like I said, it broke up the songs. I think it was good to break it up a little bit, slow it down. I think if everything was just at the same level with all these rockers, it kind of would have been too much. I think you have to break it up. Yeah, 2 would have been probably the right amount, and there's no right or wrong. But I think 3 is not a problem, especially when you have 13 songs.
All right, Lonnie, tell us about whether 3 ballads or whether I'm wrong of calling one a ballad, and then give us your third pick.
I think you're exactly right for calling all 3 of them a ballad, but I also think that, like Ken said, we're for 13 songs, some change of paces in there, I think are fine. I think it would lose something if all of them were fast and heavy and there was no change of pace throughout the album. And I think Loving the Alien is the greatest song to end the album. I just love the way the album ends with that slash playing. It almost sounds to me almost like Sweet Child of Mine a little bit, with that riff over and over and over again at the end. It reminds me of Sweet Child of Mine. It's like, what a perfect way to end that album is with him doing like a solo in the same vein as Sweet Child of Mine. I almost put it in my top 3, and I listen to that song a whole lot still. So Mark had a good selection with that. I almost put it in my top 3.
Thank you, sir.
But my favorite song on the album is Sucker Train Blues, that you guys had mentioned earlier. I love the way that song opens, just kind of builds a little bit, and then it's just Weiland screaming and using his megaphones like it's like what Scott Weiland is, and it's a great introduction to the band with merging like that Guns N' Roses style of playing with the guitar and the riffs, and Weiland kind of doing his signature thing too. It's a great way to open the album and say, this is it. This is who we are. We are the perfect blend of these 2 bands coming together. So it's my favorite, by far my favorite song on the album. And I remember when the album came out, I went on my lunch break to go get it. It's it was one of those days where I don't want to wait until I'm done with work. I got to go get it on my lunch break. And actually, Gene Simmons' Asshole came out the same day, so I went and bought both of them on my lunch break.
Oh.
And I I had heard more samples of Asshole than I had this, so I listened to this on my way back to work because I had already heard some samples of Asshole. So, but I popped this in and listened to Sucker Train Blues. I'm like, yeah, that's the song that they opened with when I saw the concert a month ago. It's like, yeah, that's really, really good. So by far my favorite song on the album.
At least one of those purchases wasn't going to let you down.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, so can I rain on your guys' parade about loving the alien?
Please do.
I'm like, my notes on this are, this is not a good ending point, and I don't think it's a good representation. It feels forced, generic, and contrived. There's way too much of the Guns N' Roses kitchen sink on this song.
Thanks
But
for
it's not
bringing us back.
terrible.
The opposite of what Lonnie just said.
Thanks for
Okay.
bringing me down.
All right, my last pick, and one of you's already picked Slither, so I'm going to go with Headspace. And it's, my head always starts moving with this song. It's just got that thing that makes my head start bopping, and it's hard not to like the message of the chorus. I guess it's very autobiographical of what Scott Weiland was facing in a challenging part of his life. There's a lot of references throughout this album to substances, to abuse, to relationships, to toxicity in a variety of areas. And, you know, I just really like how it's portrayed in this song more. And it's just a real good rocker. So you guys can now attack my picks.
Headspace. I said, hey, on my notes for that, I said very cool riff. I said, I was thinking, I hear more of the STP type vocals on that song.
Did you just
I
say
noticed
STD type vocals?
STP. That's
Yeah.
another song. That's from another song.
So
Anyway,
rock and roll after dark.
Yeah. And what else I write? Yeah, there's a nice solo in there. So yeah, it's a pretty good song.
We've already talked about the producer, so I don't think we need to talk about the pluses and minuses. Because I think Mike Klink is the alternative. Would anyone disagree with that, Mark?
Well,
would you have picked someone else?
I don't disagree, but somebody who I thought that might have been good to maybe have been brought on because he was hot in this time period was Rick Rubin. He did a lot of stuff with the Chili Peppers, and he had an interesting sound. It may not be a sound that I was totally hip to, but no matter what, when you hear a Chili Peppers album like Blood Sugar Sex Magic or something like that, they all have their sound to them, and you can call it dated or you can call it whatever you want, but when you hear that record, it has its own signature to it. And maybe if somebody like that, if you would have added that sort of element to this, maybe it would have been a different kind of record.
Interesting. Lonnie, you sticking with Mike Klink?
Yeah, I would have. I still would have stick with Mike Klink. I think he could have gotten more out of the musicianship, and he was used to dealing with those guys and knew he would have known what it would have taken to get them to reach their max potential.
All right, Ken. Any thoughts on an alternative producer, or you just don't care?
Not really. I mean, I think of these other producers like that would definitely not fit. Like Mutt Lange wouldn't work. Wouldn't work. And Bob Ezrin wouldn't work. You know, things like that. So yeah, what they did is fine, but I think the Klink would have been better.
Yeah, I'm with Lonnie on that, since it was basically a Guns reunion. All right, let's get into at least three favorites. You know, which of the three, Mark, that really don't work for you on this album? Was it a difficult task, and why don't they work? Just give us all three and your thoughts on them.
It wasn't really a difficult task. I mean, let's put it this way. There's nothing on this record I think that's a real stinker. I think for me, it's more being a situation where there are songs I definitely remembered from this record the next day or even the next day after that. And there are definitely songs that I just found, I don't want to say forgettable, but just not as strong. Let's just put it that way. So my three that I picked, and I'll have a little note for each one of them. I picked Big Machine is one that I didn't like, mainly because I thought the lyrics were kind of weak. Musically, it's sort of nothing too special. They've written better stuff musically and structurally than that song, I think. Ironically, The song that you guys picked that you guys liked, and Ken brought up because he said he liked it because it kind of had an STP thing to it. Headspace was one I didn't like, specifically for that reason. I hate STP, and because it kind of reminded me of STP, I didn't like it at all. And the last one that I picked was Do It For The Kids. I didn't like the intro to that song at all. I thought it was kind of tacky. And I just thought that overall it was just not a very memorable song to me. I mean, like I said, there's nothing terrible on this record, but it's just whether it's either I really remembered some of this stuff or I didn't remember it.
So I have to now go and listen to some STP because I had no idea Headspace sounded like STP. So there you go. Sometimes it's good to be ignorant before you hear something. Ken, what are your least 3 favorites on this album and why?
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure. I think one of them was Big Machine. I think Mark also said that.
Yeah.
I thought it was pretty good, but I said it's just okay. Yeah, I don't like the filtered mic bit, that kind of stuff too much, overdoing that kind of stuff in the song. That's one of them. Another one was which one was it now? I just had it here. Spectacle. I thought it was, it's a decent rocker. It's good, but it's another one that's kind of like I'm not going to remember it so much like some other ones that they have. And then another one, I don't know. I can't have I don't think I really have a third as, not so good, but it was hard. It's hard to pick. So I'll just leave it at those 2.
Yeah, I had a problem picking 3 as well. It was easy to pick 2 that I don't care for, and then I kind of had to stretch. Lonnie, you have to pick your least 3 favorite, and of course, they're not songs you don't like.
It is difficult, and my least favorite song on here is better than anything off of Libertad that came out a few years later.
Wow,
really?
Yeah. Well, except for maybe the first song, I do like. I don't. Oh, the first 2 songs on there. I do like the first 2 songs off Libertad, "She Mine" and the first song on there. I know how it goes, but I don't know the title of it off the top of my head. But
Let It Roll.
Let It Roll. That's it. Great little song. It's about 3 minutes long. It's really fun, really fast. I'm getting way off topic here, but first time I listened to Libertad and listened to those first 2 songs, I'm like, all right, here we go, and it goes downhill.
Just went downhill from there.
It goes downhill from there pretty quickly. Unfortunately, I wish it could have lived up to this. But if I had to pick them, I would say Spectacle, just because it's one of the more forgettable songs on the album, where it doesn't have like a signature riff to it, and it doesn't have just great lyrics to it or catchy lyrics to it. It's fine. I wouldn't say it's bad at all, but I would say it's fine. And I really like Superhuman. I can't say that. I guess I'm going to say Big Machine would be a second one that is just okay. But it's not bad, but it's just okay. This is tough. I would have moved Big Machine down in the track list a little bit. I wouldn't have put it up number 3 on the track list. Maybe. I don't know. This is tough. This is like telling me to pick my least favorite songs off Revenge. It's tough. So I'm going to go with 2. I'm going to cop out like 10 and pick 2 because I can't do it. I can't do anything.
Big Machine was, of course, the song that I said the flat pancake drumming.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's right.
But it didn't make my list as a least favorite because it has a 70s glam feel to it to me. So all right, my 3, Spectacle. It's just paint by numbers. It's like mature musicians dialing in an easy song, and it's exactly what you'd expect to hear from them. There's absolutely nothing. It doesn't have that X factor to make it spectacular. So it's just, phoned in. Fall to Pieces, without a doubt. I don't like syrupy, sappy, crappy, pea-breaky songs. Sorry.
Stick to your guns, Julian.
And I don't like the video for it either. So I did watch the 3 videos from the songs. And then my third, it would be a real stretch for me to get to 3. But I'll do it. Do it for the kids. and it's simply because of those call outs, because I like the vibe of the song. So it really is a stretch to get to 3, but I'm just not going to be the second person to cop out. The third person. So you got to keep balance and harmony. So
That's right.
B-sides, there's a ton for this
Yes.
album. I mean, obviously you've got Money, which, you know, was a song released on the Italian Job soundtrack, and then you've got various different songs that pop up on different versions. No More, No More, Aerosmith cover. Scott is No Steven is my notes. Surrender, a Cheap Trick cover. Meh is my note on that. Falter Pieces acoustic. I said I really didn't want another version of it. I don't want the first version either. It's about as unplugged as MTV Unplugged. Bodies, Sex Pistols. It's one of my favorite Pistols songs of all time. And my notes on this are Scott is no John, and the guitars are nowhere near Jonesy either. So, and then of course there's Come On, Come In from the Fantastic Four, which I haven't listened to. So, Mark, yeah, run through the B-sides of stuff that you like, stuff you didn't.
Honestly, I really enjoyed the covers. To be honest with you, there was a moment when I was listening to the record and listening to covers, I was starting to find myself saying, forget the album, I'm listening to the covers. I actually thought that the covers were almost better in some ways, because I really like Toys in the Attic, the album. So when I saw No More, No More was on there, I was like, oh, that's pretty good. And then the one thing I noticed about these covers, I don't know if you guys will agree with me on this or not, but all the covers I did like No More, No More, Surrender, you know, and some of the other songs that they did on there, they all sound like songs that influence the band directly. Like Aerosmith is obviously a huge, you know, influence on this band, I think. Same with Cheap Trick. I guarantee you Cheap Trick is a big influence on them as well. You know, and when they play these songs, you can tell it seems like, you know, they're having a lot of fun playing these songs, you know. And yeah, he's not, you know, Steven Tyler, and he's not, you know, what's his name from Cheap Trick, Robin Sander, but I really get the feel that they're really trying to do their best interpretation of it without trying to make a direct, you know, note for note cover of it, but it's still pretty close to note for note. But the Sex Pistols one I thought was kind of fun. Yes, it's not the same as hearing the Sex Pistols do. Nobody can do a Sex Pistols song as good as the Sex Pistols themselves, you know. But I kind of got the feeling that was done because maybe it was taken from an early tour. Maybe they only had that one record at the time, and you know, you got to fill up a set especially if they're going to be playing as a headlining band. You got to pull out other material. So I thought this was probably a fun live cover for them to do. The one cover I didn't like, mainly because I always hated this band and I always hated this song, and this is Nirvana, Negative Creep. Wow. Terrible, absolute junk. I just wanted to get my garbage can and just puke into it. It was just so terrible. You know, I mean, Nirvana, I don't know, they were the worst thing that ever happened to music in this country, and they directly killed, you know, a form of music that I really enjoyed. Hate me for saying it, yes. But I mean, I was into the whole late 80s metal stuff. You know, there was more than just Poison and stuff that was out at that time too. There was bands like Sabotage and other bands that were out around that time, and all that stuff went into the dustbin according to the record executives, who thought better that it's time to sign a bunch of flannel wearing, you know, junkheads from Seattle instead and release their terrible music that they were writing. So when I saw that they did that, I was like, wow, I don't know why you guys would have stooped so low to play a Nirvana song on there, but.
So when are we going to do Nevermind on this podcast?
Yeah. I was gonna say, let's do an Utero. You know, just Mark. Someone put a quarter in Mark today with Negative Creep. That's actually my favorite of the B-sides. I love how they did that. So, yeah, okay.
And we won't see eye to eye on everything, right?
No, and that's perfectly fine. I'm, you know, from the Pistols' point of view, I think I'm just happy they didn't do Anarchy. You know, and come on, Bodies, that's a good one. They might as well have done Belson, for that matter. So, Ken, give us your take on all of these B-sides and whatnot.
Well, first of all, like with Mark, was it video killed the radio star? Yeah, you should do a bonus track on your next album. You know, the Nirvana killed the metal or
Ruined my
heavy metal
life.
star or something like that. So, you make your own words, you know. Do that. All right, so since today was the first day I listened to this Velvet Revolver album, I did listen to two of the extras or other ones, which was "Come On." I thought it was just okay, and it's not something that I'd want to go back and really listen to again. "Money." I really don't get it. I can't say they were influenced by Pink Floyd at all with their music, but I guess it's just they like the Pink Floyd, and it's all let's do Money or whatever. I think it's that was a decent cover, but it's hard to that's such a classic Pink Floyd song. I'm surprised they even touched it, really. But yeah, they did a decent hard rock version of it. I would say. Otherwise, I haven't heard those other ones that you talked about, and they're probably just more. It's a your standard cover, and okay, they do an okay job on it. It's kind of like a tribute to those artists. So.
Yep. Okay, Lonnie. Tell us about that. I'll start off with the Fantastic Four one, since you reminded me. That's kind of like a segue in between albums, isn't it? That comes later.
That came out in 05, summer of 05. They're still touring for Contraband when that came out. And I saw them summer of 05 in Springfield, Illinois. And I think they did it that night. Just because it was something new to play. They'd been touring for a year. They had a new song out on a soundtrack, so I'm really sure they did it that night. So I thought that was fine. I think if it was fun for me at the time because it was a new Velvet Revolver song, but I think had it been on the album, I think it would have been just okay to me, you know what I mean? But because it was a new song and a new single a year later after the album came out, it was more exciting. That's kind of, and I think it's an okay song. I like it better than I'm not trying to dog any song on this album, but I like it better than Spectacle or Big Machine. But I think it's a fun. I really liked it at the time, but I kind of look back on it now. I'm like, oh, it's just kind of okay. You kind of over psyched yourself up for that a little bit, but I do like the song. I think Surrender is just okay. Everybody covers Surrender, it seems like. And, it's just kind of like, okay, you guys did Surrender. Okay. That's great. I thought No More, No More was cool, though. If you're going to do an Aerosmith song, you don't do a staple Aerosmith song. You do No More, No More off one of their best albums. But one song that they were doing live at the time was Wish You Were Here. Well, they did Money, the Pink Floyd song. I think Wish You Were Here would have been a cool cover to put on one of these B-sides too. But I get the point of not doing two Pink Floyd songs, but the fact that they were doing it live at the time, I thought would have been a lot of fun to do it. So, Negative Creep, don't have a problem with that. Sorry, Mark. But I think Guns always does a lot of covers, so I thought it was cool that they put out some different covers as B-sides. I think it was very fitting.
Well, there we are. This band was a mess. Drugs, ego, broke them up in the end. Yeah, that pretty much sums it up. What are your final thoughts on Contraband? Obviously, I've already flashed it. I did get the second album. I also had the EP, which had I think another cover on it as well.
Yeah, Tyranny, something like that.
Yeah, I couldn't find that anymore. But that second album really didn't live up to expectations. It was really kind of one note. I think I agree with you, Lonnie. Those first two songs set a really good tone, and then it's just kind of meanders from there. Mark, would you continue listening to Contraband, or now you've explored it, move on?
Honestly, I think I'd probably just move on. It was interesting, but like I said, that whole time period for me, I was in such a different headspace musically then, but who knows? I mean, like I'm sorry. I mean, I don't mean to diss your album, Lonnie. I mean, it's I don't like doing it because I can understand that it's probably maybe something that was very important to you at a time of your life. Like you said, you're going through divorce and stuff like that. So I don't mean to be insensitive about it, but it's just not something I was. It's just not. I just wasn't really listening to that kind of music at that time. Like I said, I was listening to a lot of different hard rock and metal at that time, but it's like I said, it's not a bad record. I kind of put it on a listening thing where I really like Izzy Stradlin, the Juju Hounds, that first album they put out together. Mm-hmm. And I can see me, when I'm in a mood to listen to that, to maybe pull this one out as well and have like a night where I listen to these kind of records. You know what I mean? Like the kind of more cerebral sort of hard rock records, So it's not a bad record, but it's probably one of these things I would listen to occasionally.
So Ken, you listened to it for the first time today. When do you think you'll encounter it next in the mood to go back to Velvet Revolver?
Yeah, I mean, you got to give an album at least like 3 listens through, because sometimes things will catch you'll pick up more, mm-hmm. and they'll be kind of more catchy on further listens. So yeah, I'll listen to it definitely a couple more times to see what ones really. I mean, my list may change or whatever how I feel on certain songs, but definitely want to give it a chance, right? And see if I want to go out and then finally buy it after all these years. So.
There you go. I think I'm more excited for this adventure because there was an album next to both of these in my shelf, and I'm going to be listening to that next because it's been a while since I've had it's the only LA Guns album that I own other than the Paul Black LA Guns one that came out. Mm-hmm. So yeah, you know what? I don't visit it very often. I enjoyed revisiting it, but I don't see it. If I'm going to listen to that sort of music, I'm going to listen to Appetite or Illusion, and I've never heard Slash's Snake Pit. I just didn't care.
That's good.
I've followed all of his.
Especially that second album.
But I just wasn't interested in Slash as a player. So there we are. All right, I think that's enough.
I almost got the silhouette of that girl from the cover tattooed on me. I'm so glad I did not.
Your wife is glad too.
She is exceptionally glad I did not do that. I've told her that story. She's like, seriously? I'm like, yeah, I was this close to doing it.
Oh my gosh.
That's when your judgment gets called into question, Lonnie, with stuff like that. All right, there we go. So what do you think about, Contraband or Velvet Revolver? Obviously only around for two albums. Scott's now passed away, and I guess some of them are back in Guns. Is Sorman back in Guns, or who is their drummer?
Frank Ferreira.
Oh, okay. But Duff and
yeah.
Well, my notes start off bashing on Sorum as well, because it seemed every time I liked a band, he'd pop up in it. The Cult, obviously, he popped up in that, and then he popped up in Guns N' Roses. I'm like, why did they get rid of Adler? I loved Adler. I thought he was perfect. Again, he comes out of that same sort of school as Peter Criss. Well, maybe a bit too much, but there you go. All right, so what do you think of the band, the album, our picks, your picks? Where did we get it wrong? Where do you think your picks are better? Tell us why. And thanks for joining us. So for now, from Mark, Lonnie, Ken, and myself, we'll see you next time.
It's been a long time since we've rock and rolled, but that all changes this August as Rockin' Pod returns to Nashville. This annual convention brings together rock artists, fans, and podcasters for an unforgettable rock experience. Special guests this year include Billy Sheehan, Ron Keel, Don Jameson of That Metal Show, and current and former members of Winger, LA Guns, Accept, and more. Stage panels, signing sessions, and photo ops will be available, plus lots of vinyl and memorabilia vendors. Music podcasters from all over North America will be appearing on site for live interviews, speaking sessions, networking, and more. Got a music podcast? Register and join us. Rockin' Pod Weekend kicks off with a pre-party featuring former Tesla guitarist Tommy Skio and his new band Resist and Bite, making their debut performance, as well as a rare hair set featuring surprise guests performing all-time classics. Rockin' Pod Weekend takes place August 6th through the 8th in Nashville, Tennessee. Tickets, VIP passes, podcast registration, and discounted hotel rooms are available now at rocknpod.com. Rockin' Pod is brought to you by DBG Productions, Bradley Entertainment, and Incaptia.
Thank you for watching or listening to this episode. Be sure to subscribe to us, like us, or even leave us a review. You can find us and join the conversation on Facebook.